Hello, my name is Catherine and welcome to my channel, I suppose. This is my first video on YouTube. I've been wanting to start a channel for a while, but I was a bit too nervous to do so. But I am here now, and I started knitting almost exactly a year ago, right after Christmas of last year. And it seems like a pretty good milestone to start talking about things. So that's what I'm doing. You'll see that a lot of the projects that I did make in my first year no longer exist for one reason or another. They either didn't fit, so I've gifted them. Their yarn was uncomfortable for me, so I have had to unravel and gift yarn or donate to charity shops. Or I wasn't happy with the final product and I knew I wouldn't wear it. I do have a few garments that still exist in their original form, and this is one of them, the Stripe Overload Tee by Spectacle Strick, which is quite popular, I would say, but I will get to that one later. And I have a couple here that do still exist, some of which I'm happy with and others not so much, and will be frogged. You'll see that I'm very frog happy. So I have an old-fashioned paper list here because I'm using my phone to film with nothing particularly fancy, and I will go through what I've made and how I feel about it, the lessons I've learned, the yarn that I used, all the fun stuff, you know. Right after I learned to knit and purl, I pretty much just learned how to knit and purl, going back and forth with some yarn that I had on hand. And once I had that down, I thought I am just going to get stuck into what I actually want to make, which is garments and sweaters. I'm not particularly interested in accessories. I have been getting a little bit into socks lately, but scarves are not my thing. It's a sensory nightmare for me. Beanies, the same thing. And also in Australia, where I am in Melbourne, it's not very cold in winter, so I don't really need them. So I jumped into a garment right off the bat with the Step by Step sweater by Florence Miller. And I made that one in Drops Nepal, which is, I believe, is the recommended yarn. And that was, referring to my handy dandy list here, it was in 4434 purple mix, I believe. And I do have photos of it, which I'll put up, but that is one of them that doesn't exist anymore. I have nothing but good things to say about the pattern itself. It's a free pattern. She has YouTube video on how to do pretty much everything, and I did do the German short rows just because I just wanted to learn as many things as I possibly could right off the bat, and I knew it would likely improve the fit from what I had researched online beforehand, so I thought, let's just give myself the best chance at success. But unfortunately, as to the quality of the end product, it's not very good. And I expected that because it was my first ever thing that I made. I was very proud of it itself. I think I turned it around in 2 weeks because I was so excited about it. And I love blues and purples, and I really gravitate toward blues and purples. So this red stripe is very outside of my usual repertoire. But unfortunately, this yarn was unbearably itchy. I see people saying Drops Nepal is really soft and nice. The alpaca, even with an undershirt, I could not have it on my body. It was so intensely itchy that I just couldn't do it. There was no way I was ever getting a single day of wear out of it, which was really unfortunate. But I think I may be allergic to alpaca or otherwise irritated by something else in Drops Nepal. So that was, unfortunately, I held on to it for a few months because I was feeling a bit sentimental about it because it was the first thing I ever made and I didn't want to get rid of it. But realistically, I just was never going to get any kind of wear out of it. The pattern itself is fantastic. I can definitely recommend it for someone who wants to get stuck in with just a garment and not starting with a scarf or a beanie. But speaking of beanies, I did in fact do that for my next project. So that was the Oslo hat by Petite Knit in Sandnesgarn Sunday, in a navy blue of some kind, and I may or may not have a photo of it. And there was nothing particularly wrong with it, but it didn't fit my head. My head is apparently too big for the sizes, so I gave that away, and it would not fit on. And realistically, I just kind of wanted to try out making a beanie. I'm probably not ever going to wear a beanie unless I'm somewhere that's intensely cold on holiday or something, so I won't dwell too long on that one. But yeah, again, it's Petite Knit. The pattern was completely fine. Everyone knows about it. I don't really have anything else to say about it, to be honest. Petite knit, we're on a roll with petite knit because I found the pattern really easy to follow, so we went straight into the Amy sweater by Petite Knit. This I made in black because I really had a gap in my wardrobe. I just needed a plain black sweater. I wear a lot of black, and I used Bendigo Woolen Mills Luxury 8-ply in a black yarn. I do have footage of this one, but again, that's another one that no longer exists in its form because the yarn, well, there are a few things that happened with this project actually. Again, I have nothing but good things to say about the pattern. It was fine. It's just a typical raglan construction, I believe, and it was fine. No problems. But the yarn is another one that I did not like. I've used the classic, I used to crochet before I started knitting, and I've used the classic Bendigo Woolen Mills 8-ply in the wool, and that was completely fine. But this was, first of all, I did not realize that this was superwash, the luxury. I did not read the fine print. So when I blocked it, I believe I have a video of this, it grew massively. And I had to undo the bind off and frog back so that it was short enough. But also, even at the start, when I had just starting to handle the yarn as I was knitting it up, it was pilling so much. It looked ratty and used and worn out before I had even started properly knitting down the body. It was, I mean, I think I was kind of hoping that it would shed and then stop shedding after I shaved it down, but I wore it a few times and it was getting worse and worse. I also wish I made it in a larger size because while the size small did fit well, I just prefer my sweaters a bit more oversized, so it was a bit tight. It looked really worn already, and I really didn't like that yarn. It felt kind of squeaky and plasticky to work with as well, so that was another less successful one. But again, I'm not necessarily upset that I made it because I did learn a lot from the process, so I don't regret it. But again, I cannot recommend that yarn, but I can recommend the pattern. But I don't think anyone needs me on here recommending petite knit patterns because we all know they're easy to follow and that they're a go-to. So that's that on that one. Next, I made the Vilma top by Gregoria Fibers, which is one that I actually still have. Happy days. This is she. I will put a video of me wearing it, but I put these pearly kind of buttons on them that I thought matched quite nicely with the sort of dainty, delicate lace work. But I have to admit, I haven't gotten a lot of wear out of this. I think it was something that I really liked and liked the look of it. It was a technique that I wanted to try, but it's not really in my usual style. I do sort of lean towards more masculine and oversized fits rather than more delicate garments. So I do like it a lot, but I just don't get that much wear out of it. I'll see how it goes because the weather was not really fit for, I mean, it's kind of hard because this would be an overshirt for me, this Vilma top, for a sort of white t-shirt, but the kind of weather that you wear that in is very few and far between here. But I made it in Cascade 220 in River Rock. I do not remember the number, but it's this beigey grey color, which again, I mean, I don't love beige, but it's nice to have something relatively neutral. And I do like the product, I'm quite happy with it. I didn't have a huge amount of trouble with the pattern, although I do remember having to knit the front left several times for some reason. I just kept messing up the lace pattern, but I don't really feel like this was particularly difficult as long as you, I mean, you might have to look up how to do increases, but for as far as a beginner goes, it's fine. And I love the twisted rib. It was, I don't even know if you can see that, to be honest. It was a pain to make. Don't get it twisted. Get it? By the way, if I'm not specifying the needle size that I used, it's because I just used the gauge that was specified in the pattern. Sorry about the lighting as well. The sun is going down. It's getting a little bit gloomy. I will turn a light on if I need to. Moving on to the fun one now. This is definitely the make that I am most proud of, which is the porcelain sweater by Lynette, which had a huge moment on social media over the last year. And so we all know it. I chose this chocolate brown color with a nice beige it's not even, is it called beige? I'm not sure, but it is a beige, chocolate brown and beige, just because I don't wear white. As beautiful as the original colorway is, I'm a bit scared of white because I worry because I just fixate on what if I'm going to get it dirty. I'm too anxious to be messing with that. So we just went with a dark color, and I am so happy with how this turned out. I made it way off gauge though. So I think I sized up to, let me refer to my notes. Okay, I used Rowan Kid Classic in nude and chocolate, those shades, and that is a way thicker yarn. Now the original pattern for this one calls for a lace weight, and I cannot remember, so I'll put it on the screen, but this is way, way bigger than that. So I sized up to a 5mm needle to meet anything resembling gauge. I was still way off. So what I did also is I sized up to a size medium, when I usually wear a small. And that seemed to help a lot. It's not as oversized as I would probably like it to be, but it is oversized enough that I will wear it. I wear this all the time. The thing I did have trouble with this as well is I had to unravel a lot because I was doing floats that were way too tight, a very common problem. And my second go seems to have gone better significantly. The only thing I can think of is, I think you might be able to see it a little bit on the sleeve. I will try and show you. But there is some puckering, but it's so negligible. And since this is the first time I did color work, I'm so happy with it, and it doesn't really bother me at all. I did have trouble with this neckline, the double folded collar. It's still a little bit too wide, but when I tell you that I got rid of so many stitches on that neckline, it was actually ridiculous. And it just kept being, the first iteration was like gaping outwards and absolutely ridiculous, like a funnel neck. So that was not great. And also I will just say with Rowan Kid Classic, I do really like this. It's mohair and wool, and I find it not itchy at all. Maybe slightly a bit scratchy, but especially if you're wearing an undershirt, you can't really feel it. Trying to do an Italian bind off with this was hell on earth, because it's sort of a fluffy yarn, it catches on itself when you're pulling through, and if that happens enough times during the bind off, the yarn starts to fray and it will break, which means that you then have to try and splice it together. And I really don't like adding a new strand of yarn when I'm doing a bind off. It's not the best. So I really don't have one piece of yarn. So I must have tried this bind off 5 times. And I eventually just had to do it very, very slowly. I completely abandoned tubular because there was no chance the yarn was gonna allow for that. And I just used Italian and did it very, very gently, as gently as possible. And I got there eventually, but it was a trial. But I was so proud of this one. I got a lot of wear out of it and I love it. The only thing I will note about the pattern itself, it's mostly pretty good, but definitely not as many explanations as the previous designers that I have mentioned. And I found the charts for the sleeves to be quite confusing. I didn't really work out where to start for each size. It was quite unclear to me. I had to do some combing on TikTok and Reddit to be able to work out what was going on there. I also did a modification to the shoulders that I've linked on my Ravelry project to make sure the shoulders are symmetrical. When you're constructing the shoulders, it's the same construction which makes one slightly asymmetrical, and I am pedantic and I didn't want that, so I went ahead and found someone who had done the modification and I just did exactly what they did and it fixed the problem. So that's a win. And I can see that it's getting very dark in here, so let me just fix that up. I'm not sure this is much better, but it is just going to have to do, so bear with me here. I'm losing light. We're going to the next project. I already see from my notes that I have missed a great number of details, so I will just be putting things on the screen as I go. It's fine. It's like gauge. I often find, I mean, it's great that people provide so much data, and I love that for them, but I do find sometimes when I'm watching knitting podcasts and such, and these roundups, there's almost sometimes too much information. So I don't really want to get into the nitty gritty. If you're interested, I'm getting better at using Ravelry. So if you're curious, just ask me, but otherwise I don't think there's much to be gained from repeating needle sizes and such and gauge here. I think if anyone's interested, they will probably refer to the pattern. So that's my prerogative. This is the next one that I made. It is the Strive Overload Tee by Spectacle Strick, and it's a pretty recent make. I think I've actually, sorry, I could see something on the camera and I thought maybe I haven't woven in an end, but I think it's just a trick of the light. Anyway, I made this in a size small in Drops Muscat, and I love this top, but if I could choose a different yarn, I didn't know what mercerized cotton was, which is what Drops Muscat is, and it's very sort of plasticky feeling. It's been treated in some way to make it more hardy, but that means that it is not really appropriate for t-shirts. It's fine and it's comfortable, but it creates a much thicker and less drapey fabric. It's quite stiff. You can see that when I am wearing it, it doesn't have that sort of drape that you would want from a t-shirt, especially 100% cotton. Ideally I'd be wearing this in the summer, but what I've ended up with is something that's probably best for very mild weather and not necessarily hot weather. So it's fine and I'm happy with it. I also went a little bit out of my comfort zone with the color because I do not wear reds and pinks. I like them, but as my skin has a bit of a pink undertone to it and it tends to make me look a little bit sunburnt. Don't think reds and pinks look the best on me, but I do really like them. So I'm kind of trying to step out of my comfort zone and try some colors that I wouldn't necessarily gravitate towards. I really heavily gravitate towards blues and purples and green. And I'd really like to find some pinks and reds that look nice because I'm trying to inject a little bit more color into my wardrobe. I do not recommend that yarn for this purpose. I think I saw someone else do it on Ravelry and assumed it to be fine. What I learned is maybe Google if something says mercerized cotton or this type of wool or that type of fabric. Should probably do a little bit of research on what that actually means instead of just assuming it's fine. I really like this pattern. I found it easy to follow. I didn't have any issues with it. I just don't, again, I'm not on a winning streak for choosing yarn. I do just think it comes with experience though. If I think realistically, when I started knitting and even crocheting, I didn't start crocheting that much longer before I started knitting. I think I made maybe 1 or 2 crochet projects and then pivoted to knitting because I wanted to make garments, and I just didn't have that base knowledge on the types of yarn to use, what's best for what type of garment or item, and it's just kind of, this year has been just a massive learning experience. So, you know, it is what it is. I'm okay with this shirt, I get some wear out of it and it's fine. But one other thing about this yarn is also, I'll show you here, I don't know if you can see that, but you can see that color bleed just there. So when I blocked this, what happened was I did not use color catchers. I kind of, again, assumed everything would be fine. Don't assume is what I've learned. Do not be like me, because the color bled very pink into the white. It's not too obvious, but in some places you can definitely see it. So just a heads up that this color bleeds a lot. We're going to go rapid fire through a couple of gift knits that I made. I made a Sophie Hood by Petite Knit in the Rowan Kid Classic, the leftover nude color that I used, and that was from my mum. She chose that yarn originally and she really wanted that for when she goes on walks. She loves it, that's great. It was, again, easy pattern. It's not really for me, but that was for her. So she chose that yarn color. I incorporated what was left of it into my porcelain sweater, or perhaps vice versa. And I actually still have balls of both the nude and the chocolate color left still, so you may catch me cranking out another one as another gift knit for someone in my family. But it is really nice yarn. I just don't really know what I could make with such a small quantity of it. I definitely knit a garment with it again, but given the gauge issues, might be a bit tricky. So the Sophie Hood, it was fine. Mum likes it, great. The next gift knit I made was the adult sweater vest from a Cleckheaton book, that pattern book, and I made that in the suggested yarn of Cleckheaton Country Naturals 8-ply in a sort of navy tweed colour, and this was kind of the bane of my existence, to be honest. This was my first ever bottom-up construction. And it's my first V-neck. The V-neck was fine, but the bottom-up construction I found challenging because I didn't really know how to make it the right So especially because my family lives in another state from me, I didn't have them readily available to try things on. So I had to get some measurements from their garments and compare. And also I found, I don't know what happened with this pattern. It may have been my gauge, but because I can be a bit of a loose knitter, but I don't think it's possible that I was so far off, because I tried to knit maybe size 4 or 5 in this garment and it was enormous, like a tent. To fit the measurements of the size 4, I believe, that I made, I had to make the first size, which was a discrepancy of something like ridiculous, maybe 20 centimeters. And that was not fun, because that meant I had to frog half of a vest, not once but twice, and it was horrific. So I kind of suspect that there is something wrong with that pattern. It could definitely have been me, but you know, it's fairly typical for me to be knitting slightly loosely, and that's fine, but this was completely beyond the possibility of that being the only issue. I was definitely using red needles, so I don't know what happened there, but it ended up fitting perfectly. But unfortunately, by the time I worked out all those problems, it was already hitting the warm weather, and my stepdad got no wear out of it. I don't know if I mentioned that was for my stepdad, so he likes it. He will hopefully get wear out of it next year. And I believe that's a superwash yarn. Again, not something I would choose for myself, but if I'm knitting things for other people, I feel like it's good to do low maintenance if possible, if they're not going to take the trouble to hand wash things, because you don't want them to receive this and you just spend all this time making it and then it just gets trashed in the wash. So there we go. Next we have this year's ultimate flop, which was the T #1 from My Favorite Things Knitwear, and I may or may not have photos of this, but I used Rowan Summerlight 4-ply in the color Cobalt Blue, and you can see me struggling for words with this one, because I truly, this almost broke me. So first of all, I did a gauge swatch and blocked it. Then somehow when I was actually knitting it, turned out with a completely different gauge from what I was doing. The first one I did was enormous and had to frog half the garment. So I went back and I made a smaller size, that's fine. But what I ended up with ultimately was something that was really baggy and oversized, and also just looked really untidy. My tension was all over the place rowing out. It had random holes in it. I really struggled with the folded hems on the bottom and the sleeves. I think I could do them better now, but just because the yarn, I don't know, I found the yarn a little bit hard to work with. I think I would have had better luck using the recommended or something closer to the recommended, which I believe at least has some merino wool content, because it was a mess. So I finished that and pretty much 2 days later frogged the whole thing and decided I would use the yarn to make the ivy top. And I have it here, which I can never tell which is the back or the front. And I really liked this pattern. It's by Petite Knit. And let's see here, it is just too big for me. Again, you know, this is definitely my bad. I didn't gauge swatch. But I held the Rowan Summerlight 4-ply 100% cotton double, which creates a really lovely and soft fabric. It is so nice. But it's just a bit too big. It's not too bad. I'll say that it's wearable, but the armholes do go down a bit far, which again, Ravelry projects again warned me about the armhole issue, and I just thought that I was immune to it or something. I don't know what happened there, but that was ill-advised, I will say. So I ended up with armholes that are too deep, and the fit is just a bit too wide. Again, I like a baggy fit. It is my preferred thing, but this garment is specifically meant to sit a bit more fitted, and I just think it looks a little bit messy, especially because I usually wear baggy pants. I don't know what I could possibly wear this with that wouldn't look a little bit goofy, so this is destined for the frog as well, unfortunately. This poor yarn has been through the ringer. It's been in 2 T #1s and an ivy top, and now it's going to be a second ivy top, which is, I'm so sorry to this yarn because it's gone through so much Pattern, again, it's fine, but just the armhole depth is too much. I need probably 3 to 4 fewer increases for me in the armhole construction. So this is kind of what's prompted me to be a bit more meticulous about using Ravelry, because there's no way that I'll just remember that off the top of my head. So I've written that down for when I try again, but I have been struggling to get the emotional strength to frock this, because I only cast this off maybe a week ago and it still hurts because I was really happy about this. People are saying though that the neckline is rolling up. I did find that, but honestly I just don't mind that much, and it probably would be a bit nicer if there were more finishing details on the, I don't know, instead of just the raw edges, but you know, honestly I'm okay with it. The only other thing I will say about it is I did size up a full needle size to bind off at the bottom, because when I originally did the bind off it was way too tight and there was just absolutely no give. So I did that and I think that was a good addition. I saw that in someone else's projects as well. But that is pretty much everything that I have finished this year. I have a couple of whips on the needles that I probably won't touch on here because some of them are on hold and 2 of them are gift knits. One is a baby knit for a baby shower and one is a pair of socks that has been kind of also the bane of my existence. But we'll get into my sock woes another time. Notice that I only have 4 completed objects here from my first year of knitting, and I see a lot of people in their first year, they've created so many beautiful garments and it can kind of be hard getting caught up in that comparison mindset, but I kind of am okay with that. I feel like I'm trying to focus on really making pieces that I really like, and for one reason or another the ones that I've mentioned were not wearable for me. They were really about me learning what I like and don't like. First, when I started knitting, I was really upset about having to frog anything, but I do feel like over the past year I've really learned to be okay with undoing things and accepting that a garment isn't for me or that the yarn doesn't work for me. And I do think that the right call was made for all of those, like the Drops Nepal in particular. It would have been nice to keep my first ever garment, but the fabric was so itchy for me. And at the end of the day, I'm trying to create a wardrobe that I can really be proud of and that I will wear. I can say that the only thing that I'm truly 100% proud of is the porcelain sweater, and I haven't made peace with that. I think a lot of us get really caught up in trying to be perfect and thinking that these other people are making these beautiful things. Why hasn't it worked out that way for me? But I think that I have made peace with that. I am a pretty slow knitter and I'm focusing on making things that I will get a lot of use out of, and I do not find any benefit in keeping things around that I don't feel good in. Realistically, I'm just not going to wear things if they fit strangely, they're too tight, they're itchy, they're uncomfortable to wear. So I've learned a lot this year about what I do and do not like and the kinds of garments that I should look at making moving forward. I will make a video about those plans and the specific items that I'm planning on making, but I guess not to get on a soapbox, but I do just kind of want to make the point that not all of us are here churning out 20 sweaters in our first year, and that's completely fine. You know, a lot of it for me is also getting out of this instant gratification mindset that a lot of fast fashion perpetuates. There's a lot of focus on we need it now, I need this right now. But I don't think it's a bad thing to slow down a little and reflect on if the things are made for you. And I don't think there's any shame in repurposing things if you find that they do not suit you or your life as it is. I in particular get really caught up in, oh, I really like that item, but I don't think about if it has actual utility in my life as it is, rather than how I would like it to be or how I perceive in this fantasy parallel land where it might be of use to me. That's my year of knitting. I've had quite a few flops, but I have also had some garments that I'm really proud of, and I've definitely learned a lot about the kinds of yarns and garment constructions that I like to make versus the ones that are not so successful for me. So I'm looking forward to making some more in the new year and hope to see you again soon.